Mindset Game podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. Before we get started with this week's show, first off, let me take this opportunity to welcome back the regular listeners. And if this is your first time listening to the show, I hope you enjoy this episode and decide to subscribe to the show. On today's show, I've got Jessie St John-Sharpe. She is ITV's The Biggest Loser official runner-up in 2012, losing 7 stone 8 pounds in just 24 weeks. She is now a qualified PT, BCSC Sports Coaching Analysis, and now studying a Master's in Cardiac Rehab. So welcome onto the show, Jessie.
Thank you. Hello.
So before we delve into today's topic, Jessie, can you kind of divulge, firstly, what was kind of the initial things going through your head, like from a mental perspective, as to why you wanted to go on The Biggest Loser? To kind of, what was kind of the catalyst and kind of final, how would I put it, like alarm bells to say, well, I need to do something about my health?
Okay, so I would say mentally, I think I had, I would say of being paranoid. Like I was extremely paranoid because I'd been overweight. I felt like everyone was talking about me and laughing at me. Like I felt that a lot. I was very unhappy. I wasn't able to wear the clothes that I wanted to wear, and I wasn't really living a life, I suppose, in a sense, because I felt like all this extra weight was like stopping me from socializing and mingling with other people in a sense. And I did have a couple of episodes where my heart just like, it was almost like the pressure of holding this weight. I felt my heart like a pain in my few occasions, and I knew that I had to do something about it, but I just felt that I was so big and I'd been big for so long that I didn't know how to go about it. I didn't know what to do. And then I saw an ad for The Biggest Loser on television, and I was like, yeah, I'm applying for that. So, yeah.
And with regards to like you'll be at your Bachelor's of Science now, did you start that after you'd gone on the show, or was that something you'd started before it?
After. So once I complete the show, it's like I got obsessed with educating myself about the mind, the body, and yeah, because I qualified as a PT, then I wanted more knowledge, and then I did my bachelor's. So yeah, afterwards.
And you talk about the seekingness for knowledge. Why do you think that came about after, or have you not been that kind of way inclined naturally?
I suppose before I didn't care less about food and the effects that it had on your body. I didn't care. But then because I had like the before and after of how great I had felt once the weight had been lost, I felt like, well, other people need to feel like this because I feel amazing. And I think that's where it came about. Like I just wanted to know about everything, how it affected the mind, how it affected the body, and also sharing that. I want to share that knowledge with others as well, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And we talk about obviously the weight loss that you accomplished, I would say, during that time period. Now that you are a qualified professional, now you could probably take it from two different opinions. Now, from your professional standpoint, would you say that kind of weight loss is probably too drastic of change for some people?
What do you mean? Like go into, what do you mean in the time
Yeah,
span
in
or
the
just?
time span.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, when you lose that weight, that environment of The Biggest Loser, and I'm very grateful for it. And without it, I wouldn't be where I am now. I know that much. But it's a very synthetic, fake environment. As in, like we was training 6 hours a day, 7 days a week. We had no television, no everything was weight loss. All of our food was like weighed out for us. It was all about weight loss and nothing else, and that is not realistic. And that is why I lost so much in that short space of time. And I know a lot with contestants from The Biggest Loser, they normally put the weight back on, to be honest with you, most of them. So it just goes to show that losing that weight in such a synthetic way is not good. And it's, what's the word, it's not realistic, really, from someone to go from 0 to 100 like that. It's not realistic for the average person. So I would say, in general, no, I wouldn't say it was good to lose such a short amount, such a big amount of weight in a short space of time. And even in terms of, say, loose skin and stuff like that, I mean, I experienced that really badly. And I was told that if I would have lost that weight over a slower period of time, the loose skin wouldn't have been so drastic. So yeah, there's that side of it as well.
I never thought of it that way as it been. I think, I guess, well, for the people that have seen it in the past or seen different shows, be it the British one or the American one, I can see why the contestants are pushed to breaking point at so much. When you explain that you're doing exercise 6 hours a day, it's pretty, even for somebody that's that way inclined mentally, that's very, very probably difficult to motivate yourself anyway.
Yeah. I had, like, after The Biggest Loser, my heart rate and blood pressure and everything, it was that of an athlete. It was like impeccable. In fact, I did a session at the gym, and I got, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but when you go a little bit too far with the gym stuff, you start going crazy with it. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. Has it?
From that regard, from an exercise perspective, no. But obviously, I was an athlete, so I didn't have the luxury of getting to that kind of compulsion because, in an essence, you have to do it in one way or other.
What you
Because
train 6 hours a day? Is it athletes?
I think it would depend on sport. If I kind of look
You
at it from
basketball?
well, that from basketball perspective, no, because it's very much domestic level. So I train at most twice a week, so it's very much a
Oh,
hobby
okay.
now. But back in the day, probably elite level, or would it be volleyball? I'd have been training between 15 to 20 hours a week.
Okay.
Rowing was 30. Rowing would probably be as close as you're going to get to that compulsion that you talk about. That's upwards of 30 hours a week, so it's virtually a full-time job.
So,
So,
38. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So it's very similar then. Very similar.
but I would
Um.
never say that's compulsion because it's coming back to that root essence of sport. It's you're doing it for the enjoyment. So I would probably go stretch it a little bit to probably a compulsion because you become, like you say, a little bit addicted to it. But then I at the same time I was studying, so I could kind of balance between the two that I wasn't solely 100% immersed in sport and it was 100% this all the time. So I think obviously other athletes are not in the same boat, so they probably would probably fall in that same category that you speak about.
Yeah. Well, that happened to me. Like, I got really addicted, like, to the point where I had sold my car. No, I had a car. I bought a bike, and I was using my bike to travel everywhere. I had a thing where I had to do minimum 5K a day. So I would literally do 5K a day. I would ride to the gym, even because at the time I wasn't a PT. I used to work nights, so I'd ride to work, which was about a 40-minute ride to work, do my 12-hour night shift, then ride to the gym to do 5K. Like, it was like I was addicted. And then one time I literally fainted in the shower, and then they, like, said my heart, like, my blood pressure was something like, I would say, I can't even remember, like, sort of, it must have been about 60/38, something like that, like, very, very low. So they like injected me in my heart because they was like they didn't know at the time that I was like fit and crazy. They thought I had like a heart condition. So
Mm.
they put something in my heart to speed my heart up. And then after that, and I was in like in the hospital and they gave me like Lucozade and all this stuff. After that, I calmed down, but there was a period where I was like crazy. Like it does happen. You get like addicted. It's really weird.
But Jesse, you talk about riding your bike. Obviously, for the people in the UK would assume you are from London, but a lot of people obviously around the world probably wouldn't know that. Wouldn't you say that's a little bit dangerous?
What, bike riding?
Well, I would say so in London.
No, 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 no. You get used to it. I mean, if you're from London, I mean, to someone who's not from London, they could say walking up the street at 2 o'clock in the morning is dangerous. But when you're from here, it's so normal to go out at 2 o'clock in the morning if you wanted something. Do you know what I mean? So to me, no, I wouldn't say it was dangerous. Where are you from?
Well, I'm based in North Wales now, but I did live in London for a bit. No, I mean from a traffic perspective, more than say going out 24/7.
No, not really. Not really. No, not at all. I've never had issues, to be honest with you. The only thing that used to frustrate me was you know when you cycle a bike you always feel dirty. Do you know what I mean? You always feel sweaty. That was the only issue that I had.
Why do you say that? What? Because you don't really get a respite, you mean?
As in like like for example you get dressed up sort of thing or whatever, and then you've been sweating on a bike for 30 minutes. It's like you never really feel fresh, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? No.
I think so.
Yeah. Because it's like cardio, isn't it? It's like you're doing cardio to go somewhere. So then it's like you don't feel, yeah, you feel like you need to have a shower the moment you get there.
I think that's personal preference. I've heard of people do that, but that doesn't that's I get that argument for people say, well, why do you do that? Why do you want to have a shower when you're going for, say, example that you bring up of going to the gym? It's a bit pointless because you're gonna then sweat again.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like you just always feel like dirty. I used to cycle everywhere. So if I was going out to dinner with my friends, I'm getting on my bike. So I could have like my makeup on, my shoe, and I'm cycling down there. So yeah, that's what I mean. I was proper addicted.
But then, why the bike? Because it was another form of exercise that you could get in, where
Definitely. Yep.
people would argue, well, look, you've got access to other forms of public transport to get around.
It was just it was really strange because it was like I was addicted to numbers, to calories, to everything. Like it was like a real numbers thing. So like I said, it was minimum 5K every day that I had to do. I had a certain, I can't remember the number now, but I had a certain amount of calories I had to burn. I had to reach 10,000 steps, and it was all about numbers. So cycling was just another way to burn calories in my mind,
But
but
do you,
at the same time get to where I'm going.
but do you think it's because The Biggest Loser kind of put it into probably the back of your mind and maybe subconsciously this kind of regimented way of going about things?
Definitely, because what The Biggest Loser does is it teaches you how to lose weight and how to lose it quickly, but it doesn't teach like that is not normal. But obviously, if you go from no exercise to eating loads of junk to the polar opposite, you don't really know what is normal. So it doesn't teach you how to be normal because the average person doesn't do that. The average person doesn't, they go to the gym maybe what some average slim people don't even go to the gym 5 times a week. Let's be real. Like it's more like 3 times a week, and they make sensible food choices. I didn't know that. I just knew one extreme and the other extreme. So I knew.
But then would you not agree that maybe they should look at, I don't know, from a program perspective, it's probably very difficult having something put in place that it's obviously maybe have a psychologist there as well to see how everybody is, as you know, everybody is different, how everybody is responding to that type of environment, how is it affecting them from a mental perspective, emotionally, etc. But then also from obviously you, as you talked about earlier, with it becoming virtually your way of life, it's become a habit. So it's very much how I would say was a negative. I don't know if you'd agree with it, a negative thing on your life because it's become so obsessive that you kind of going down a vicious cycle.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, the aim of the show, obviously, in a sense, the biggest loser is a company as well. Let's not forget that it's a company, regardless of television. The Biggest Loser is still going. They still have, not so much in the UK, but especially America, Australia. They still have their products, and you can go onto their website and sign up. So it is a business in itself.
Mm.
So in terms of numbers, people tuning into the program, they want people to lose big numbers each week. Like, in their mind, if you're not pulling those big numbers, it's not a good show. So they put pressure on you because they're under pressure to have a certain amount of results. So it's kind of like I won't say they don't really care about how you feel. Well, no, they don't. They didn't. They should have had a psychologist, and I think even after they should have, because they don't, like, say someone like me. I've been massive all of my life. I didn't know any different. Like, I didn't know any different, and I didn't realize how traumatic everything can be. And it sounds really dramatic, but it's not, because it's made such a difference to my life. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Especially on the loose skin side of things. Like, I'm really happy I've lost the weight and everything, but I wish someone did tell me that I would have had those issues, because you put in all of this hard work and then you still can't wear the stuff that you thought you'd be able to wear. Do you know? So that, I felt like I could have done help. Like, I could have had help with that, definitely.
But do you think that would have changed your mind at the beginning of the application process if you knew what the things that you know now?
No, no, it wouldn't have changed. It wouldn't have changed my mind. And I love the show. I love what it does. But if there was any negatives, it would be what I've just said. But it wouldn't have changed my mind. And it's literally, the show has changed my life, and I'm grateful for that.
But then coming back now from, say, the personal training perspective now, and obviously the people that actually train the contestants now, mustn't they be in kind of two frames of mind because it's going against
Everything
everything you've
they
been
thought.
taught
Yeah.
to help people with, but then also you're trying to.
Yeah. I mean, from a personal trainer perspective, I would say, like, when someone's really sort of morbidly obese, you're going for sort of long, slow distance training. You're going for that. So I don't know. They must have felt like in a compromising position. You've got someone who's like, there was one contestant, he was 30 plus stone, and they're doing exercises like hit, like, that's very dangerous. And we had doctors and stuff on site, but that does conflict with what you're taught. So I don't know how they must have felt, to be honest with you.
But then from a television perspective now, Jesse, do you do you remember? If I don't know if you've watched it back, your actual series since after obviously you finished it. Did they have like any medical warnings to say, well, there were medical staff in place? Obviously, this is kind of as you put it, not real life scenario because obviously the general public don't have doctors on call on standby next to them while they're doing exercise. Do you remember if that was actually the case?
Answer that question again, so I fully understand.
In terms of when it was aired, did they actually say in in the program that obviously this is like how would I put it? Uh, not a real life environment. Obviously, there's medical staff there on standby if something did go wrong, which wouldn't be the case
Um,
in real life.
I think it was very much a thing that we knew, but it's not something they advocate. And when we finished The Biggest Loser, we was in a contract. I think it was 3 years. We wasn't really allowed to talk about certain things or talk about it in a negative way. We wasn't allowed to do that. So say like now that contract is gone now, so I can say what I want to say. But even down to the things like the cookbook, they had a Biggest Loser cookbook, and the stuff they have in the cookbook wasn't stuff that we was eating on the show. So yeah, it's very yeah. They didn't mention that to the general public, that there was ambulance staff and all this kind of stuff.
But I think probably, well, as you know now, being a health professional, you probably assume there's going to be something in place because there is X amount of factors that could go possible. I'd say worst case scenario could possibly go wrong.
100%. Yeah, definitely. I mean, everyone on The Biggest Loser is pretty much deconditioned, like deconditioned, overweight. You know, already there's underlying risk factors there. Do you know what I'm saying? So to come in and do drastic exercise, you know, for someone that's young, you know, if you're young, you know, you've got less, you know, less likelihood of stuff happening to you. But you know, the bigger you are, the older you are, the more of a risk you're at. So it's very dangerous, very dangerous. I
But
mean,
that,
I haven't heard, to be honest with you, I haven't heard of there being any fatal incidences like on The Biggest Loser. I haven't heard of any, but it's a thin line, really. It's a thin line.
but then the argument, Jesse, for the older population, they might say that the younger generation now is becoming a little bit more lazy, so they may be less inclined to want to. I know this is a generalization now, to possibly want to help themselves, be it, and if they are in that position.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in my lecture the other day, funny enough, we was talking about calories and calories used. Now, about 100 years ago, the average person was burning about 3,000 calories a day. And that wasn't using the gym. That was just doing things like, you know, using the broom, not having a car, you know, um all of these items that we have now make us expend less energy. Yeah, so we're as it's not even something that it's something so normal, you know, everyone now is expending less energy. All of the appliances, all of the equipment that we have now makes us use less energy in comparison to back in the day. You know, they was burning on average 3,000 calories a day without going to the gym. This was just natural daily routine. That's what you're burning. And today is 2,000. If that, really, if that, I reckon if they was to maybe even do new studies, I reckon the average person doesn't burn 2,000 calories a day. Do you know what I mean? The average person, in terms of what you're eating as well, you know, we are getting lazier as a human race, I think, definitely.
Well, you could probably stretch that as far as also knowledge as well. It's people are, I think, are, I won't say less inclined to go and find the information for themselves, but they are quite happy to be somewhat dictated to. Okay, this product is blah blah blah. It's supposedly good for you, whereas I think, like we are being in that health profession, I would question loads of things around something. It's like, well, is it really? Um, I don't know. This is coming back. I talked about it a few months ago on the podcast about the BBC News did something in regards to, I think it was salt or sugar, and they said, "Oh, this is X amount higher than what you should be eating on a daily basis," but then didn't actually put it into actual an equatable measurement. Well, okay, that's misinforming the public straight away, but that's me being able to. I think that's probably my way of thinking. Well, okay, you've said it's this, but from even like a package perspective now, they will break it in down to, in most cases, 100 grams and then a serving size as to what is the content of that ingredient. So for the news to say these products are higher in the salt or sugar than your daily allowance is kind of misconstrued, and it's kind of giving the wrong information.
Well, in terms of like the media and what the media puts out and the government and stuff like that, personally, I think it's all consumerism. Yeah, I think, if I'm being honest, I feel like having sick people, having overweight people, people have disagreed with me, but I think it creates revenue. It creates money. McDonald's, if people wasn't addicted to all of these fast foods, these high sugar foods, there wouldn't be that revenue there. Do you know what I mean? So as much as they say, oh, high sugar, high salt, if the government wanted to, they could clamp down on that. They didn't want people driving into London. That soon stopped with the congestion charge. If they really wanted to I feel like if they really wanted to stop obesity or get people healthier, the government could do a lot more if they wanted to. But let's not forget, these fast food companies, these chocolate companies, they make huge profits, you know, and that tax is going back to where? Back to the government. And it's just, to me, it's just a messy circle. But I know obesity, having people obese, it creates money. Whether people like to think of it in that way or not, I think it does. You know,
No,
it
it's
does.
that's an argument I would definitely agree with. It's
Yeah.
I think it's for the people that would disagree with that. It's like, well, okay, is your opinion, but you could say it is that kind of vicious circle of the government, the food companies, and obviously you didn't talk about the pharmaceuticals, but it's kind of a vicious circle.
Yeah.
They're all helping each other out one way or another.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even in terms of, all right, like I tweeted, I don't know if you saw my tweet today, but a guy went into hospital and he had something wrong with his foot anyway, and he had hospital food. And the hospital food, I don't know if you know what canola oil is, but it was basically
Mm.
like canola butter, which is like the worst form of oil there possibly is. Like canola oil, bread, and apple crumble. That was his meal at the hospital. Like, how is that? Like, that is going to make you sick in the long run. Like, where is that for health? Do you understand? Like, I think it's just it's a cycle. It's a cycle, definitely.
Well, I would say it's kind of the argument for that would be two sides of the coin, because obviously you talk about that meal, it's not over the long run is not nutritiously uh, viable. And then also on the flip side of that, government, the hospital is trying to cut costs in terms of their overall budget, so they're trying to keep their food bill as low as possible. And obviously, well, as everybody would know, or would possibly in some cases possibly like to ignore, is obviously cheap food. Cheap food is in more cases than none not good for you.
It's not. And the thing is, it's like practice what you preach. Like, practice what you preach. If you're going into hospital and this is a place that's going supposedly to make you feel to get better, you have to give those healthy foods. Like, let's just say it was someone with diabetes and they was in there due to, I don't know, having going hypoglycemic or whatever the case is. You're gonna give them this crappy food. You're gonna give them this rubbish. How does that work? You know.
But
I,
then,
I,
for that argument, Jesse, you would hope that somebody that has got, well, be it type 1 or type 2 diabetes, and is very knowledgeable of their, how would I put it, that disease, it was not really a disease, but their condition, would be able to question that this is not the right food I should be eating. Is there some, well, they probably could come from it from multiple angles and say, either politely say, this is, do you have something else I could have, or obviously go off the rails and say, I'm not eating this.
do you know what, James? Do you know where? Okay, the UK as a whole, yeah. Do you know where the majority, like they did a study, and do you know where the majority of people get their vitamin C from?
No, I'm quite interested in what the answer to
Like,
this.
have a guess. You will never guess because I didn't. My lecturer told me this, but have a guess.
I'm assuming by that response, it's not from something that's actually good for you. Then
Yeah, potato.
well, it's not too. It's not
I didn't
too. It's
even
not too bad.
I didn't even know that potato had vitamin C. I didn't even know that. But that is where majority of people get their vitamin C from. That's how bad as a nation our diet is, that we get our vitamin C from potato. That's crazy to me.
Well, you probably could go a step further in terms of you say that. Would you mean as in it's an unhealthy form, as in a French fry or chips and things like that? Then
Definitely, yeah. It's definitely not going to be like boiled potato. which is crazy, you know, which is crazy. It really is crazy.
but then, do you think that comes back to? And I've raised this probably on several episodes now. Do you think it comes back to people not being taught about their nutrition, be it from a family perspective and then also from a school perspective?
Would you, just out of interest, would you say that disease is hereditary, or do you think that you get disease based on your diet choices, which are hereditary? Does that make sense?
It would. It's in most
Say, for
case
example, like,
in most
say,
case it would be your diet choices because you can't
yeah,
you
like, say, you know, do you have a history of cardiovascular disease, for example, yeah? But then are you actually at risk of cardiovascular disease because you had the same diet as your parents, and your parents before that had the same diet? Like, do you know what I mean? Or are you genuinely genetically at risk, or is it the choices you've made over a period of time?
um I think you could probably come from an answer from probably both standpoints. Okay, you could have a hereditary disease. Okay, I think cardiovascular disease is probably is a poignant one because it's possibly okay. There's nothing you
Yeah.
can do about your DNA. You can't. Well yet. But then in terms of like the nutrition, I think you've got a fair point in saying it's that because everybody in reality, well, they may say they don't, but you'll have a choice as to what you put in your mouth. Nobody is forcing you to eat, I don't know, KFC, McDonald's, all of that kind of type of food, ready meals
All
and
right. Okay. I'm assuming you're mixed race, yeah?
Mhm.
Yeah, like me. Okay, so say like they say ethnic minorities are more at risk of getting cardiovascular disease, yeah? So black people, in Asians, they're more at risk. Now, are they more at risk because they eat a lot of fried foods, for example? Do you know what I mean? They eat a lot of, say like plantain, for example, yeah? That's drenched in oil. I don't like That's like drenched in oil. Certain foods, dumpling, like I don't know what mix you are, but say like Caribbeans, dumplings, festival, fried chicken. Do you know what I mean? Is it because the diet is the same, or is it because it's genetics that actually makes you more at risk of cardiovascular disease, like genetically? Or is it that you have the same diet as your mum, and your mum had the same diet as your gran, and you've all had the same diet, so then you've all got the same risk?
Um, I don't know from a mixed perspective. I think you raise a good point there because, well, I would argue, well, the plot, like you say, plantain, yes, it is fried, but then technically it's still a fruit though, so it's
Yeah, a high technically is very high carbohydrate food though. Do you know what I mean?
true. But then to come back onto your point as to is it
Or
your
like, for
family?
example, like corned beef. Like I don't eat corned beef. I think it's grim, but like beef, for example, that could be like, what is that? Like, what is that? That is obviously, that is risk factor foods right there. Like, do you know what I mean?
But I think, like you were saying, it you could say it is and it isn't. It is a risk factor because, as you say, it's a food that is higher in saturated fat and obviously going to put a massive amount of pressure on your be it your
Do you
cardiovascular system.
do you know
However,
do you know the percentage of vegans that get cardiovascular disease?
no, that's going to interest me. I'm assuming in theory it should be quite low, but I would be surprised.
Um,
Is that all?
That's all. 5%. That is all.
Well, it should be
5%.
lower. It should be lower than that.
Yeah, it should be. But I mean, 5%, like that's quite interesting, isn't it? Like, and then I wonder how many, um, say, if you was to compare it to say the ethnic minorities, those who are vegan, how many of them are now, like, how many of them have cardio? I don't know the answer to that, but how many of them have cardiovascular issues? You know, it's interesting. It's very, very interesting. You know.
Yeah, but then I don't ever see. This is probably a generalization of my own of that probably those ethnic groups ever possibly going down that route because it's very much engrossed in their culture, their way of living, etc.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I mean, well, there's certain like Rastafarians and stuff. Like, what mix are you? Are you Caribbean or African?
My father's African American, so who in terms of like the going back through the well, not genetic pool, but family history. I wouldn't like to say. I'm my father's side of the family is either from the Caribbean or Africa.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like you do get like obviously you got like Rastafarians and they have like a idle diet. I mean, they look. I don't know if you've seen them. They look really, really healthy to me. But it's true. I don't know many Caribbeans, Africans that take a vegan. They are there, but there's not many. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I agree. Definitely.
But then, Jesse, this probably goes into my next question now. Obviously, you've gone on now to do your master's in cardiac rehab. Did obviously, as we've talked about earlier in the show, did that have any bearing on kind of the route you've taken?
But in terms of family history and all that kind of stuff, in terms of the course I chose.
Um, a little bit, yeah. I would say I would go down that route.
Yeah, I mean, basically what happened was once I qualified as a personal trainer, I thought that I was going to be working with people that were morbidly obese and I would be able to help them lose weight and get active and healthy. But them type of people just wasn't coming into the gym. It was people who were, already slim but wanted to have a more defined six pack or wanted a bigger bum or had a marathon coming up. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy doing that, but that's not where my passion is. Like, I actually want to work with those who are morbidly obese and basically help get them on the health path. So when I looked at the masters, like in terms of like the cardiovascular and all of this kind of stuff and the risk factors and the type of people that I would be working with, I said yes, that's what I want to do, because them patients will be coming through the NHS. When you work in cardiac rehab, you're going to get the patients coming in who've had heart trouble. Most of the time, the people that have had problems with their heart, they're either overweight, or they've taken some sort of drug and it's given them problems, or age or whatever. But in terms of, there will be people who are obese coming in, and those are the people that I want to work with. Those are the people that I want to help rehabilitate. And once I'm qualified, that is exactly what I will be doing. So that's more my passion.
Well, it's a difficult one in terms of like you say, it's. I think a lot of people are fixated on obviously their own. How would I put it? Cues as to why they went into the profession, and obviously yours is a very good one to. And obviously, it's a difficult one because obviously you probably know it first case point. Obviously, you were never gonna go to a gym in the first place, or you in any case in point, so you probably know firsthand. It's going to be rare occasion that scenario is probably not the case, but in most scenarios they're going to avoid it because of stigmatization, uh, those demons within their own minds as to people shaming them. Possibly not so, but you are your own worst enemy since when you're thinking like that. So I think you probably right in going down that route and probably getting them at the source.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of like being overweight and going to the gym, people can be very cruel and people can be mean. I'm not gonna lie. I've seen personal trainers have a client and talk about them like, because they're overweight or whatever. People even, and that's someone who's training them. So people can be very, very mean. So I can understand why someone wouldn't come into the gym at a particular size. I actually get it. But I was disappointed because I thought that it was like, yeah, there was just going to be loads of them coming in and I can help them all. But that just wasn't the case. So then I was like, okay, I need to change this because as much as, yeah, I do like, I enjoy teaching the exercise classes and I like that, but that's just not my passion. Like, it's really not. Yeah.
Well, I think it's I think they've churned out, and it's probably it's kind of a different, it's kind of it's not sidestepping the issue, but it's kind of tangent now. But the people are being churned out on a, well, we'll say on a monthly basis now. It's probably a little bit more than that, and obviously they've got this assumption of what it is, but then actually when you actually get into the job and start doing it, the realization is in most cases it's not the job that you thought it was. Okay, you got to kind of be.
James, I trained the guy once, and do you know what he wanted to do? He wanted to basically make the muscles on his forearm bigger so it looked good when he was wearing his watch. Like, and don't get me wrong, like,
Got too much money then.
yeah, like I would train that person, but for me that, and I'm passionate about personal training, but not that cosmetic side. I'm not really interested in I'm more health based rather than just looking good. Like, I want people to look good, feel good. I want someone who's like morbidly obese to go to a healthy weight, and then like, it's life changing. It's really life changing for someone to be obese and change their life. Like, it's very much life changing.
I think you raise a good argument there because I think it's that is definitely more satisfying because you, like you say, you're helping somebody change their lifestyle. Whereas I think, oh, this is a generalization again. I think most people and society at large are fixated on the aesthetic look. I care what other people think about me. I obviously that's for me. That's maybe been a case maybe when I was in my teens in most cases, and that was I think everybody would probably agree with the sentiment now. Everybody's gone through some sort of I won't say issue, but having to deal with how they are appearing to themselves at that stage in life. Okay, there's gonna some people may have it at the teens and maybe later on and things like that. Okay, that's everybody's different, but I think to say for me, bar that, I don't care. At other stages of my life, I could care less. But then I'm probably in the minority.
Yeah, you most probably are, to be fair. I mean, I think a lot of people care about how other people perceive them. I mean, social media is, you most probably see it yourself, where you think, oh, where someone's posted something and you think, oh, that's not you. Like, you don't normally behave like that. Why on social media are you behaving like this? You've most probably seen it yourself, and it's like to gain, not all, but more time is to gain the approval of others. I've seen it from people I know, and I think that is not who you are. But on social media, you've got a totally different persona. Like,
Or
You know?
you can kind of hide to a certain extent, be it
Yeah,
behind a computer screen, behind your mobile phone to a certain extent, and not divulge your true self. Okay, that's in the larger sense of things is probably not a good thing because you, in most cases, are not able to get your feelings across, your expressions, whatnot, because you're putting up this, well, this wall, this facade that you want to see the good days. Obviously, as you know, we'll see straight through that, be it from be it another health professional, model, you name it. It's like, yeah, okay, this is fake. This is impossible. You're doing this 365 days a year,
yeah,
being like that because there's going to come a point where there's definitely something you were hiding in the background because you can't be perfect all year round because you're not a robot.
yeah. I mean, with the fitness industry as well, like fitness professionals, they make it seem like they never have a bad day. They never have. Some of them are addictive, and some of them most probably don't. To be honest with you, because some of them are really, really addictive, but not everyone's an angel 100% of the time. Or if they are, some people are taking growth hormone or taking steroids, or some people have had surgery and then they say, oh, you can get the perfect bum, but they've had bum injections, like it's full, like it's a very, not to all, because there are some great personal trainers and great role models, but there are also some that are not honest, and I don't like that. I think you should be honest and open, like if you've had work done or you're a bad food day or whatever, I think it's good to be open and honest, personally.
Well, I've had the opposite. I've had people say to me, "Shouldn't you be? How do they word this? Sh- shouldn't? Oh, I can't remember how you the quote. Oh,
Like,
uh,
shouldn't you be a perfect example, sort of thing?
well, not to those words exactly, but it's like, well,
Practice what you preach, sort of thing.
yeah, that's the one. Uh, I kind of turned this on its head. It's like, well, I'm a human being as well. And I think I can't remember what I was eating. I wouldn't say it was. I wouldn't glamify it and say it was something healthy because it wasn't. And I did it because I needed energy. And obviously, the fastest way to do that is obviously eat something that is
I mean, it's funny,
higher
isn't
in
it?
sugar.
The thing is, it's like there's other things. I've talked about this before with someone else, but it's funny because there's certain things, like if you're addicted to drugs, for example, yeah, you don't actually need drugs. Like, you don't need them. Like with food, you actually need food. Like, if you don't have food, you're going to die. You need food in your life. So it's one of them things which is like, you can actually be addicted to food. Like, it sounds really dramatic, like, but you can actually be addicted to sugar, for example. I've seen it. I was addicted to sugar. God knows I was. I loved sugar, you know. And it's something that, it's like, you actually do need food. It's not. It's not. You know. And I feel like, especially in the Western world, we celebrate birthdays, we go out to dinner, we're very sociable people. If you could do it where it's like 80% of the time you're good and 20% of the time you're not, or you have some sort of a setup, you're fine, you know? As long as you do things in moderation, it's not a problem. But for you to never do it, that's also a problem to me as well, To never ever go out for a meal and, I don't know, have a piece of cake, for example. Once in a blue moon, it's all right. It's when you're doing it consistently.
But then, Jesse, would you not argue that companies like The Biggest Loser, Slimming World, um, oh God, there's a few, then Weight Watchers,
Wait, what?
and things of that nature, kind of, I'm trying to think of the word, kind of portray and get people to think along the lines that if I eat 80/20, well, say that split of 80/20 part of the time, I'm not going to get to my goals. And if we go a
Well,
step further than that, if you have, say, that piece of cake, oh, I'm going to go off the rails.
I mean, Weight Watchers is a funny one. They was kind of under scrutiny not too long ago, and they had to change their whole system because Weight Watchers, what it did was it had a point system. So say everything was almost like calories, basically. So you have you do a questionnaire. I don't know if you know much about Weight Watchers, but you do a questionnaire. Based on that questionnaire, it gives you a certain amount of points. So say you can have 25 points. Now with that, you all your foods is they have a book, and each food has a point, or like an orange might be half a point, a bar of chocolate might be 5 points. So you have these points, and once they're finished, that's it for the day. If you exercise, you get more points. That's how Weight Watchers works. Now what was happening is that people was basically losing weight because they was eating in moderation, but they had an appalling diet, like a really unhealthy diet, because all of their points were spent on crisp, cake, fast foods, whatever. So they actually had to change the way their system worked. Now that's again, like, that's not I wouldn't say that was an 80-20 rule, because you're being bad most of the time, you're just doing it in
Mm.
moderation. That's not good neither. That your body's still starving of nutrients. You're not getting that nutrition in. So I feel like, yeah, if you're good most of the time, you're feeding yourself, you're getting nutrition, like, you're getting nutrition, not just energy foods, but you're actually getting nutrition. And then, once in a blue moon, you go out and you say, you know what, I want a piece of cake. Cool. But when it's like every day, all of the time, that's when it's an issue. Um, Slimming World, they do red and green days. I don't know too much about Slimming World, other than they basically do a red day, which is like you can have meat, and on a green day is carbs. So I don't know how that diet exactly works, to be honest with you, but I know that they split the food groups up, and yeah, I don't know how that works. And what was the other one you said?
I brought up The Biggest Loser.
In terms of the diet on The Biggest Loser, I don't know what that diet is, because the diet that we had and the diet they advocate in the book is completely different. So I can't really commentate on that one too much, because yeah. But the diet that we had was very healthy. So we wasn't allowed carbs after. So we had carbs with breakfast, carbs with lunch, but no carbs with dinner. And our carbs was weighed out at 50 grams for lunch, 50 grams at breakfast and 50 grams at lunch. And it was like, your typical complex carb. So you was allowed 50 grams of that, and 125 grams of protein. And in terms of sort of green leafy vegetables, that was sort of unlimited.
It's not too bad, but I
Yeah,
think it's obviously it's for people to picture. I can probably do it because it's not too difficult to comprehend. But obviously, 50 grams of carbohydrates is well, in the modern sense, is virtually nothing, because obviously we've gone. You probably agree with this, far and beyond what we probably like, and you brought up earlier on, obviously, with the calorie intake. We're eating probably more calories, but more calories made up of carbohydrates than
then
we'll ever need.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even if you take is it the corn fructose syrup? Like, that is in like every sauce, every like ketchup, like corn fructose syrup, like, is in everything. Like, it's a food that has been made into like 1,000 things, and it's so bad for you. Like, it's so corn in general. I think, I don't know if you corn is a really, really big GMO. Your body can't really break it down properly and process it properly. Do you know what I mean? But it's literally in so many foods now, and it does nothing for the body. It's crap. It doesn't do anything, you know. And we have so many of these dead foods, like, that don't actually do anything for us. They don't give us any nutrition. You know.
So for my final question, Jesse, to wrap up the episode today. Obviously, I like to finalize the episodes normally with this question. If you had to summarize what we've been speaking about today for people to take away into one sentence, what would that be?
Into one sentence. Could I end it with a quote? Okay, so I will say, I don't know which order it goes though. Food is thy medicine, and medicine is thy food.
I think that's a great quote to end the episode with. So once again, Jessie, thanks for coming on the Mindset Game podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's been my pleasure. And before I forget, I would really appreciate it if you would be so kind as to leave a short written review, as it helps to get the podcast more notoriety, and it would be more visible in future to others, and thus helping more people, which my guests and I are all about. Once again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time for another episode of the Mindset Game podcast.